run it old school.
We don't do
live.
countdowns. Yeah, we're just going live. We'll do it live. Because we're here to punish you all with New Comic Book Day Book Club, the show where we're talking about the books from the last month, November, that are noteworthy number ones, those issue number ones that we've been reading, give you some highlights, things to pick up at your shop, things to run screaming away from so that you don't deal with for these new comic book days. That means I'm hanging out with this Jamoke. What's going on, White Whale Comics?
Hey, and obviously, as everyone knows, we are the final say in if you should buy a book or run away from it. So,
the arbiters of quality.
Yes, we are never wrong. Can trust us 100%.
Yep. And never sarcastic either, which is a good quality to have, I think.
And very fairly critical.
So for those that are new to the show, we bounce back and forth month to month on each other's channels. So I have the link down below for White Whale Comics YouTube channel, and we'll be back there for the end of 2023 discussion around which we haven't really even spent any time planning.
We haven't discussed the discussion.
What were some of our favorite things from 2023, and how do we rate, rank, or qualify the quality reading of the year? So be looking forward to that, even though we have not at all.
Yeah, that episode always stresses me out.
I know you don't like ranking things.
I also don't like forcing myself to remember what I've read over the last year and say, oh yeah, this was good.
I need lists in my life, and maybe it's the teacher in me or whatever. Like, I like to have things organized a little bit. The problem is my collecting has shifted so dramatically to collected editions that a lot of times I'm reading things after they've come out. I'm even if it's just a few months, when you're looking at the best of 2023 and I'm like, oh, I love this book. And they're like, yeah, but it came out in
22.
Yeah. So for me, the challenge is like, what did I actually read that at least had time in the calendar year 2023?
Usually, like, especially the last few years, there's been that standout for me where it's like, okay, this is going to be number one with a bullet,
right?
And then it's like 2 through 5. Okay, I guess I'll pick these.
But do you have that this year? Because I don't know that I do yet.
No, I don't know that I do either.
Yeah, because it was so clearly Layla Starr last year that I think everything else just came by the wayside.
That was 2 years ago.
Was that 2 years ago? What was last year then?
Last year, I think you picked
Powerbomb. Was it Powerbomb?
Did you pick that as number one? Or was it Righteous Thirst for Vengeance?
Oh, Righteous Thirst. Yeah, there you go.
And I think I picked Catwoman, Lonely City.
Yes, which I had, I think, number 2 as well.
Yeah, I think my number 2 is Righteous Thirst, maybe. I don't know.
And I finally got the oversized Righteous Thirst hardcover. So cool.
Yeah.
Beauty. Love it. Let's say hello to the friends we got. What's up, Kevin? How you doing, sir? What's up, Chris? Chaos and Comics. Didn't we just do one of these? It's so nice that you're excited to be here.
November already.
I know, right? What's up, Tony? How you doing? As of now, I'm U2's only fan.
I'm U2's only fan.
What is up, Carrie the Bronze Page Comics Collector? What's going on, man? And we got Gordon. What's going on, Gordon? He says, liars. Just kidding. Sorry.
That was something about how we're never sarcastic or anything.
Right. So obviously our thumbnail here is just because Marvel does great covers, and we both read the new Punisher series from David Pepose, and a writer brave enough to actually come on New Comic Book Day Book Club and discuss his issue 1 with us. Not for that book. No, he was not bold enough to come for the Punisher. This was for the Scout. What is Scout's Honor?
Scout's Honor, yeah.
What is up, JP Budget Collecting? What is going on? And Toby, what's going on? Good to see you. And Perry. Everybody's jumping in. Here we go. What is going on, everybody? So let's just get the Marvel book out of the way. It's a Punisher book.
Is it?
It's got a guy in the skull suit with guns killing a lot of people, and he has a tragic family death backstory that leads him to want to kill criminals. I mean, it's at the very basic level.
Yeah.
Is it a book worth picking up? No. It is a Marvel #1 to most every. It checks most every box, except it does not have the last page villain reveal, and it does not jump out of order in time very much. So in that way, it does avoid a couple of potholes, but it doesn't avoid them with any like creativity. That's where the problem is for me. So those that don't know, there's a new Punisher, and this story has to do with this sort of like cyber tech looking Punisher. Family was murdered by seemingly some underworld crime characters, and he is on the hunt to get revenge, and he's going around killing a lot of people. He has this young black lady who is like his microchip, who's giving him the gear and telling him where to go. And the best part about the book for me is that it is very linear. You just watch him from beginning to end, hunting this guy down and killing the guy, and that's it. It's not controversial at all. There's no element that's controversial in my opinion about it, except the fact that it's not Frank Castle, because Frank Castle's in some far off land, limbo. It's not limbo, but it's something like that. It's bland. It's like toast that hasn't been buttered. So it's really dry. It's really crunchy, kind of irritating. And you like know that it's bread, and you're like, this is bread. I generally like bread, but you need something else. You desperately want something else when you're finished eating it. There you go. That's my review.
That's pretty good. I mean, I have some stuff to say about this book.
Go for it. I did like. I mean, I guess I like this cover. Is the nicest thing I can say.
Yeah. First of all, since Mr. Pepos was so generous to come on our show, I'm not going to pull any punches, but I will say that I have read his stuff that I've enjoyed.
Sure.
So I'm not, none of these critiques are saying that he's a bad writer. I'm going to point the finger very directly once again at editorial, because we know this guy can write a comic book. He did not write this comic book very well. First of all, it starts off by putting such a sour taste in my mouth with these two cops who are such caricatures of detectives.
Giving us exposition,
just totally wise-assed.
Yeah.
They literally find a bomb in a house and say, oh, looks like we got a dud here.
Call the bomb patrol and get me that coffee.
Clear the house. We have an explosives device. It's such a bizarre tone to start a Punisher book with.
Yeah.
It's like 1 degree away from it being a comedy, because these characters are so preposterous.
But not designed for laughs, so you're not laughing at it. You're just kind of like, huh.
Just like this doesn't feel like it is on human Earth. My second problem is, I don't know if we needed to read something leading up to this, but no. I have no idea why this guy is the Punisher.
This is his first appearance, legit. There's no prelude to this.
I mean, I understand that he's acting like the Punisher in a way because, as you said, someone murders his family, he's out to get revenge. Fine. But he dons not the Punisher logo, but a close enough approximation
logo.
And then gets upset when someone thinks he's the Punisher.
Yeah.
And just he is, you talked about toast without the butter on it. He himself is that. Like, he has no personality. I don't care about his family. I mean, I hate to sound harsh, but it's a comic book. They're not real people. But like, it doesn't make you care about him or his family because he
No.
is so detached from emotion and so detached from
Well, and they
being
don't give us any
three-dimensional.
time with them or his
No.
his experience with them. There's no time spent dealing with any of that because again the benefit is it's largely chronological, so we're way past the fact,
Yeah,
which in some ways is a flaw, but
right. It would have made more sense. And, once again, it's this thing I keep harping on, which is pacing and timing, is that Marvel editorial probably said, no, we need to have him be Punisher by page 3. Where, it would have been a much more interesting book if we saw him and his family, we saw the house blow up, we saw him escape, because they insinuate in the book that, oh, the husband did it, and immediately you find out that he obviously didn't. So that it's not like leaving that breadcrumb hanging or anything.
what
It's
about instead of a last page villain reveal, it was a last page Punisher
hero
shirt reveal?
Yeah,
Where that could have been a very interesting way to go.
He escapes the bomb somehow, or
Yeah.
They intentionally remove him from the house to try to frame him for the murder.
Right.
And then he, remembers these stories of the Punisher and how he's been missing, and he makes his own Punisher shirt, and he says, like, maybe this Frank Castle guy had a good idea going, and you see him strap up with a bunch of guns. Yeah. I don't know. This is just off the cuff. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be better, but this isn't it.
Here's the other thing I wanted to highlight. And hello to Trouble Asian. It's good to see you, sir. Hope your day is going well. Happy New Comic Book Day, everybody. It feels like an even flatter Arnold movie, not from his heyday, but from like the late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Where it's just because, like, oh, we need strongman to shoot people.
He's got stupid one-liners. Like
stupid.
Bad, like badly written. Even Arnold wouldn't say them. One-liners. The one that drives me crazy, and there's a lot of them, I suppose, is he's like fighting some bad guy who says, "Now my fallen brothers shall be avenged," and he hits the guy with the bottle and says, "Avenge this." It's stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I understand he's not Frank Castle, and he's not.
But it's like that's a bad Deadpool line,
right? So, like, I don't want him to just be a carbon copy of Frank Castle, because then what's the point of having a new Punisher? But
that's where that's where Frank Castle is. He's in Weird World. I forgot. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was unimpressed by the artwork as well. Overall,
I wasn't familiar with the artist. I don't know if you are.
I don't know. I should have kept notes on this.
You really should not have.
His sidekick is just there for exposition, it seems. There's like no. There was something really aggravating. I think when he busts through the wall.
Oh my gosh! Yes, when he's fighting Hyde, he picks up a briefcase to protect himself from Hyde, and Hyde punches the briefcase, and he crashes through an entire concrete subway wall, lands on the other side, and says, "Woo, at least that briefcase cushioned the blow."
Yeah.
And I'm like, it didn't cushion your back, jackass. You just went through a concrete wall.
Transference of energy works. Like, if you punched him hard enough to push him through a wall, it still would have crushed his whole chest.
It reminds me of the Guardians Volume 2 when he's like, the skin has just as much thickness from the inside as the outside. Like, it doesn't make sense that you can cut through that way.
So he's tracking these guys through the sewers and the subway tunnels. He blows up a wall into their hideout.
Yeah.
And their response is, "Well then, look who's decided to join us." Not, "Holy shit, someone just blew up a bomb."
He didn't come through the door. Fuck.
Yeah.
Nobody is surprised. They were waiting to surprise him, and he surprises them, and nobody is surprised.
Yeah. It is
worst birthday ever.
It is just truly bizarre.
Gordon, yeah, this is the tone of our show in general, is that we tend to be very critical, especially I gotta say, I'm very hard on Marvel issue number 1s. I think they've generally been poor over the last few years. It's been really rare that we get a great issue number 1 out of Marvel. And they suffer from a ton of bad tropes and bad comic writing. But occasionally, and I will say, you know, both of us were singing the praises of Green Lantern War Journal just a couple of months ago from Philip Kennedy Johnson. So those lightning bolts strike at the big 2 every once in a while, but this ain't it.
This ain't it at all. And we're certainly not. We don't have a lack of options for Marvel number 1s because there's 4 or 5 every week, it seems like. So it's not like, oh, Marvel 1s haven't been very good lately, but there's only been 3 this year. It's like,
Gordon, right. Yeah. And I will say, I've been sticking with the current Blade run, and it is far superior to this. And I will even say too, if you want a good Punisher issue number 1, I loved the Jason Aaron run and that just wrapped, and his issue number 1. Talk about flipping the script and going in ways you didn't think it would go. Like, that's a really interesting number 1 that takes some big, bold risks and makes it interesting. We're hating on the book right behind us here, the new Punisher run that just launched.
And another thing that really just absolutely is bringing me to a point where I am done buying Marvel books almost, like across the board, is that this book was $5.99.
Yeah.
And it was, quote unquote, 36 pages, but only 28 of that were story.
This is true.
Chaos Comics says Pepos is a good writer.
And we tried to make that point, and maybe we didn't do it as succinctly as possible.
Stepped away while we were trying to.
He's one of the only, I think, 2 writers to come on our show and talk about their new books on New Comic Book Day. We generally don't seek people out, but when we have friends like David or David Boer from Kanto has come on.
Only David's.
Yeah, just David's is really all we're looking for. David Mack is next.
I agree. And that's what I said at the beginning of my review, is that I have enjoyed his work in the past, and so I can only look at Marvel or Marvel editorial as to why this is so off the mark for me, because I'm sure he has the ability to write a good Punisher book, but he did not. This is not a well-written Punisher book.
Yeah.
So yeah, 28 pages of story for $5.99, whereas a book we're going to talk about next or in a moment, The Deviant, that came out from Image, is 42 pages of story with a cardstock cover and better paper quality.
And incredible artwork for the same price. Mm-hmm. Like, why am I going to buy an inferior product that I get less of for the same price as something I can buy from another publisher? Because it's got branding.
Yeah, I'm over it.
So for me, overall score for something like this, I think I'd give it a 5. Like I don't think I'd go above that. It's got the action. I'm very pleased that it didn't do the whole skipping in time and big villain reveal. I mean, a lot of comics would push the big hide villain reveal at the very end. They didn't, and I was happy with that. So I'm willing to give it like a 5 for that.
I'm at like a 3.5.
That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't boring. I'll give it that. So like, that's why it's not like a 2 or a 1, but
right. This is a great point, though. A lot of indies not doing ongoings anymore. That's a good point.
Yeah. And I mean, that's unfortunately a reflection of the market, where they just sell better because they can put them in a trade and dump them on Amazon,
and then try to sell it as a TV show and a movie.
Yeah. And they don't have to commit to a creator who wants to do a 30, 40 issue run.
Oh, sorry. Roscoe's here, and there's his amazing drawing right there. Mm-hmm. Yay. What's up, Roscoe? Good to see you, sir. Sorry to make everybody a little nauseous from moving the camera around.
So I agree. Like, it bummed me out that they're most miniseries, but it's just, it seems like it's not a feasible business model. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I saw
it's because you're a deviant.
No, it's true.
Yeah. Well, then let's move on from Marvel, because we got two indies to kind of spend a little time talking about before we get into anything else we might have read this last month. You put me on to the new Tynion book from, is it Image?
Mm-hmm.
The Deviant, and I ended up reading it digitally, so I do not actually have a copy to hold up for people. But it definitely gave me vibes. Let me blow that up a little bit. It's got a Christmas holiday theme, scary, murderous Santa Claus. I even told Alec to like just take a look at some of the pages from Gideon Falls, because of the art and the sort of creepy barn sequence in both had me some fun vibes for those. But the concept seems to be that a murderous masked Santa killer from 1973, seemingly captured at that time, seems to be coming back in 2023 to continue his murderous spree. And in between, we have a young gentleman who grew up in the town where the original crimes occurred and had some emotional and interesting connections with the person who was caught and put in jail for the crime, is now trying to deal with that or exercise those frustrations through writing about it and speaking with the gentleman who is caught and in jail, while a new series of crimes seems to be coming along. Artwork was really, really creepy. In fact, the first few pages have very little talking. And then towards the end, when it's the interview between the captured killer and the writer, there's a lot more dialogue. And so the ending is very dialogue heavy, but it is very interesting. It's very creepy. It's got some good, if you like your Christmas stuff with a little horror mixed in, you know, the peanut butter chocolate combo here is very strong. And I think,
or your horror stuff with a little bit of Christmas mixed in.
I mean, yeah, it's either way. It's either way. We're blending our October, December together. And so I came away very entertained, but I keep falling back on, I'll check it out in a trade when it's all done. What were your takes? What did I miss? I know obviously there's a big discussion around homosexuality in this book, as from the 70 era all the way to the 2023 era. What were some of your takeaways, and what did I miss?
So the art is very creepy, but at the same time, like, stunning. Like I was really impressed with the artwork. And it does kind of jump back and forth between time, but I don't think it's not in that way that annoys me, where it starts at the end and then like leads you back there. It's just, you know, it kind of is telling two stories between the 70s and kind of the present day.
And it's not exposition-y either when it does that.
No.
They do a great job of sort of like plunking you down, and you have to figure out what did you miss, what happened, which I appreciated.
The horror is pretty horrific.
Graphic, yeah.
Very graphic. And yes, as you kind of alluded to, there's this interesting kind of overarching idea, mostly based upon this conversation this writer is having with the man who was convicted of the killings back in the 70s, of the fact that this man was a homosexual, or I assume still is a homosexual, and kind of claims, not so indirectly, that the murders were pinned on him because of that.
Yeah.
That people saw him as a deviant, and so because he's a homosexual, he must be also a murderer. At the same time, the kid who's now grown up to be this writer, he lived in the same town, wasn't really exposed to the murders, but his friend shows him the house and says, like, oh, that's where the Santa Claus killer, whatever they call him.
Yeah.
Says, oh yeah, he was having sex with boys. And the killer then in the present is kind of talking to the writer saying, oh, was that the first time you realized that what you were feeling, is something that people do? Basically saying, like, was this your first
his gay awakening, basically, right?
First time you were exposed to the idea of what a homosexual is.
Right.
And so it was that very interesting dichotomy of this guy, this writer, seeing this man as both a murderer because that's what he was told he was, but also, someone who kind of let him know that he wasn't wrong for the way he was feeling in a way, I guess. But I'm sure that led to more struggles of him saying, well, if I'm feeling the same way this murderer felt,
what does it say about me?
What does that say about me?
Yeah.
And you kind of get some hints at the fact that he has been dealing with some therapy throughout the book. So we don't really see what that's about. But yeah, then it ends with seemingly the same killer, maybe a copycat, pardon me, at the end in the present day, who can't be the murderer because the murderer is behind bars.
Yeah.
So was he in fact framed or set up, or maybe not even framed or set up, but, made out to be a patsy?
Yeah.
Because they needed to close the case and bring some peace of mind to the city. And they used his sexual orientation to do that.
Yeah.
So it, on top of it just being like an interesting crime story and a scary horror story, it's also like a pretty interesting social commentary.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just very well balanced in that way.
And I think for me, the strongest element is the I don't want to say narrator character, but the writer, because you get this understanding of how, as a child, this shaped his understanding of himself.
Right.
This thing that had nothing to do with him, but because being gay clearly was something that he did not know existed, right, until it became just this huge publicized thing. Then she seems to shape his own identity based on external perception, right? And then you get to see him kind of like trying to confront that baggage, which I find very interesting and humanizing in his character. So that's my favorite part of the story. I don't read a ton of horror books. I tend to, get them in trade every once in a while and just read the whole thing rather than individual issues. So like I've skipped Ice Cream Man and a lot of the other ones that people have been touting of late. But I feel like what this one does that those don't always for me is have that human element that works really well.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think this is a secret to anybody. James Tynion is a queer writer. So, I don't know. I don't think any of this is autobiographical, but, it is at least has some authenticity in possibly, somebody's coming of age as a gay man. It has a firsthand perspective. It's not just someone kind of, using this as a plot device,
Right. So for me, like that didn't play into it as much as I think just the general idea of the sexual awakening can be so scary, right? No matter what you're dealing with at the time. And so to add this layer of now it's like not just like taboo and not talked about. Now it's like, sort of like you've made a monster out of it, like a literal monster out of it.
Quite literally.
And I think that I found really interesting. And in the same way that the 80s horror, movies were creating fear around sex. You have sex and the bad guy's going to kill you kind of thing. It's there's an element to that here, just a modernization of those themes that works in a big way.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, even the killer in the book says, when he's talking about how this kid had his first experience with understanding that, from him, his first experience was from hearing about Ed Gein, who, in his own words, wasn't homosexual, but wanted to have sex with his own mother, which was, deviant behavior. So he's like, back in when Ed Gein was a kid, there was probably no difference as far as kids on the schoolyard were concerned. Like,
right.
you were a freak, and
Yeah.
so you weren't treated the same. And
Sure.
obviously, we understand now that those two things are not equitable to each other.
Despite what some people want to tell you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, if you're a fan of Something Killing the Children or anything else that James Tynion's done, the pace that his things move at is real deliberate. You know that the art style is always very interesting. So I would imagine you're probably already on this book and aware of this from Image Studios. Yeah, man, Hack, welcome in. We're talking about The Deviant from Image and James Tynion the Fourth. So issue number 1 came out in November, and I'm very interested in getting a trade at some point down the road, depending on how. I mean, if it jumps the shark at some point, I'm sure I'll hear about it. What are your thoughts? Are you going to get issue 2 and keep on with this one?
Yeah, I enjoyed it enough that I assume it is probably a miniseries.
Right.
I'll put it on my subscription. I mean, I don't think. I also get a steep discount for working for a company that sells comics, but
right.
I think even if I didn't, I would still probably pick up this book monthly just because I enjoyed it enough.
Sure. Yeah. For me, this is like an 8.5 maybe, and I'll trade weight it.
Yeah. I mean, it was a 9 for me pretty easily. It wasn't like, it didn't blow me away in a way that, I'll to give something like a 9.5 or something like that, but it was told well enough, and the art was really stunning, and it dealt with themes that were interesting and don't get tackled a lot in the medium. So
sure.
Yeah, I thought it was great. If you guys haven't picked it up, I would recommend it.
There you go. Horror fans too, get your fix. The last one that we're going to talk about for November that we both read is called Lotus Land from Boom Studios. Our writer is Darcy Van Polgeest, and artist is Ciao Felipe. I'm not familiar with either one of them. Do you know them at all?
Yeah, it's the writer of Little Bird.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
How dare you?
And the artist, have you seen their work at all?
No.
Okay. Borinquen, que onda? And what is up, Nigel from Desired Comics? And I did say hello to Hack, but I didn't click on your name, so there you go. What's going? Do you want to summarize this one? Do you want me to do it?
I mean, it's your show.
All right. So this is a futuristic tale having to do with a gentleman and his kid that are living sort of, I don't want to say off the grid, but out in nature, away from the big city of Vancouver, where the story mostly takes place.
In the year 26 something.
Yeah, 600 years in the future. And they seem to have a very interesting existence where they are avoiding certain tropes of humanity at this stage. But Dad's past catches up with him when a couple of, I would say, law enforcement characters show up, very, very Blade Runner-esque, looking for the Blade Runner to come out of retirement and do a job for them. And he leaves his kid with nobody to watch. Not much explanation of that. He goes and flies back to the city, where we do get a lot of Blade Runner vibes in what's going on in culture at this stage. It turns out that there is some big technology that everyone is sort of tied into at this point that is being threatened by an outside source, and they want this gentleman detective to catch the threat. And before he can get too into it, he goes back to visit the mother of the child that he is caring for and have a conversation with her. It doesn't really go well. She's not happy to see him again, seemingly wants nothing to do with him or the kid. And he gets called away because there is, at the main facility where this technology is being utilized, there is a hostage situation, and he gets rushed back to this facility only to find that the head of the facility, who basically hired him, is dead, He's got his head cut off.
Yeah, I was going to say quite dead.
And the villain, quote unquote, that he had been looking for is standing there holding the head and seems to be threatening the technology in general, which our hero character seems to be very partial to, because there's some relationship between this technology and the child that he's caring for back in the wilderness. The police rush in. They seem to foil the crime and kill the guy. But we are left with more questions about what is really happening here than we do have answers.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Did I do all right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and, you know, like any good noir story, that's kind of the whole shtick, is that you're trying to uncover the situation with the main detective or main, protagonist, who is also trying to figure out what's going on.
Any takeaway thoughts on this one? Any feelings you had reading this
one?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not Little Bird. It didn't it didn't grab me in that sort of way, but it's very well written. It's a very good futuristic noir story. It is maybe a little too vague.
That was my big frustration, for sure.
I mean, I think I know what's going on, but I'm taking a lot of leaps.
Right.
So what I think is going on is the thing that the technology is called the Keeper program.
Right.
And so I think what it is that his son had died, and that his son is now some sort of artificial representation of his son, which would explain why the mother doesn't want to have anything to do with it, because she's like, probably like, my son is dead. Like,
that's not my son.
Because you see him at the end, he's got some sort of like stuff on his chest, which would also explain probably why the dad felt comfortable leaving him alone in the woods, because he's a robot. Right. And so either he is the dad is and the dad also has some sort of superpower where he can touch people and see their memories.
Yeah, at the end he basically touches the villain character and gets this like splash page view, which gave me a different Philip K. Dick, gave me the Minority Report vibes.
Yeah. But also, like, his reaction to what he saw made it seem like that's not how he normally receives information, because he says something like, "Oh, I saw something," whereas he seems kind of taken aback that he didn't get a clear image or something. I don't know.
I didn't get that. I took it as the guy was dying, and so that was what was keeping him from getting a full picture, was that he was bleeding out. But
oh no, he says, "Did you see anything?" He said, I don't know. But yeah, because it throughout up until the end, he references, he's like, "I'm not taking the gloves off. I'm not taking the gloves off," and you don't really know what that means until towards the end, where you see him.
Turns out it's not figurative language; it's literal language.
It doesn't mean that I'm not gonna start punching.
Right.
Because he is a big guy, so you would think that maybe he's a bruiser, but yeah, I mean, so yes, it maybe was a little too vague about what's happening in the details. Obviously, the step-by-step of the story is very straightforward. This guy gets pulled back into being a police officer. There's a problem. He's trying to investigate it. He finds the killer. The killer gets shot, and they're trying to figure out what happens from there. But the ins and out of the world that he has built is certainly left to a lot of interpretation, which I assume will be built out over the rest of the series. But and another friend of mine who also read this, I was talking about it the other day, had the same frustration of like kind of feeling lost in the world. And I mean, that's not a good feeling when you're trying to read a book or a comic or whatever and feeling like, okay, like I'm following this character, but I don't have my feet on the ground. I don't have any sort of foundation underneath me.
Which I think we had similar questions with with even Little Bird, as far as like being so vast and so different, and no touchstone that we could relate to on that cultural standpoint. But it
Yeah.
felt more, it felt clearer despite that.
Well, right. And I think for me, the reason for that is Little Bird was so fantastical.
Mm,
Like it felt so far removed from reality, where this is like, okay, yeah, it's the future, but it still feels like regular Earth, just
right.
kind of extra. So because of that, it's like it's almost like an uncanny valley thing where if you see a robot that looks like a robot, you think, well, that's a robot. But if you see a robot that almost looks like a person, you're like, that makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't know where I stand with you or
Hmm.
where you stand with me. So maybe that's what this is like, where it's like an uncanny valley of time where it's like, yeah, this is Earth, but I don't really understand. Like, it feels off. Like, I feel like I'm missing something. Whereas Little Bird, you see this and you go, well, this is Alien.
Right.
So I don't have any point of reference for this.
Sure. Well, then I'm assuming just based on the pedigree, issue 2 is on your pull list. You're like, yeah, I'm getting issue 2.
Yeah, it's gonna be just because, like, if it were any other writer, maybe not any other writer, but if it were some random writer, I maybe would skip issue 2. But because I like Little Bird so much, I know that's the first time I said that on this channel or my channel or anywhere. Because I like Little Bird so much, like I'm willing to give this the benefit of the doubt for, whatever, however many issues it is, because
Yeah, because it's definitely not an ongoing. This does not feel. It definitely feels finite, just
yeah.
even in this one issue. So I would assume that it's a 5, 6, whatever issue.
And then
story.
the Little Bird sequel is coming up next year.
Oh, is it for sure? Because I feel like it was going to be this year, but they got pushed a little bit.
You like Little Bird? Didn't know that. Yeah, I know.
Secret. We keep secrets.
I'm a big Stranger in Paradise fan too, in case you haven't heard that.
I don't know that you've done any shows on it though. That's actually, fair.
We
did the
a-
one
on I Dream of You,
Yeah.
but yeah, I haven't built my channel around my love of that like I have with Little Bird.
Because you're still reading, right? You're still getting the new, was it Parker Girls, right?
Yeah, that just ended.
Because I don't hear you reviewing any of that, telling us if it's any good.
It was good. Yeah, I mean, it's like a direct continuation of the Strangers in Paradise world. So
okay.
Because
have there been other mini series in between the original Strangers in Paradise and Parker Girls?
So he did Echo and Rachel Rising,
okay,
which were kind of in their own universe. And then he did the 5 Years book, which kind of brought into like his Terryverse. So
okay.
like they're all within the same universe. But there was a Strangers in Paradise 25 miniseries that kind of brought you back into the characters, and then this was following up to that. So
Gotcha.
It's not the first time we've seen these characters since the end of Strangers, but
how many issues did they do for the Parker Girls?
I forget. I just read the last one recently, but
okay.
I mean, maybe 12. It wasn't that many.
It didn't seem like it had gotten into the 20s or anything.
No.
Okay.
Right. And
I didn't mean to derail us.
No, it's fine.
I'm pretty certain. I'm definitely curious to see where it's gone.
I'm pretty certain he's moving to Kickstarter to fund his projects moving forward. Like a lot of independent creators are, because it just guarantees you the money you need to survive while you're making the thing.
Right. Yeah. So for me, Lotus Land, I'd probably say 7.5. And I'd be interested to hear if you say issue 2 is phenomenal, then I may go and just grab issue 2. So I'm going to wait on you in December.
It was like 8.25 for me. It wasn't like I didn't sound like I loved it so much more than you. It's just my the little bird in my heart is telling me that I need to stick with it.
The little bird in my heart. I love it. Awesome. So those are the big three. Did you have any other issues from this month that you wanted to take some time to run through?
Yeah, I just want to quickly mention Transformers issue 2 because we talked about Transformers issue 1
Right,
last
which
month.
I did pick up and I did read.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay, so we can talk about it briefly
Yeah.
because we left off last month with you saying that you weren't going to buy issue 2, and I said I was, and then I told you I read it and that it was so much better than issue 1. So it sounds like I talked you into. So I'm curious to see if I led you astray or not.
I mean, I'm not upset that I read it, but I don't want to get issue 3.
Okay, fair enough.
So it still felt like the same for me. I know that we got a little G.I. Joe thrown in there, but I still just feel like it's all right. Like it's not.
It delivered what I wanted from it from issue 1,
which is what?
Which is, just Daniel Warren Johnson writing the Transformers book. Like that's exactly what it was, like Starscream stepping on people and
right.
And like I felt like the way they introduced Duke was very organic and it didn't feel like shoehorned in or anything. It made total sense to the story and hopefully to the story moving forward. So I don't know. I had a lot of fun reading it, whereas I felt the first issue was kind of like a little stale. And this one,
a lot of setup, obviously.
This one felt much more living to me, I guess.
Okay. For me, there was, even in 2 issues, I didn't feel like there was any like emotional stake at any point. So for me, it just felt like the cartoon, and it's like, it's fine. Like I don't need it.
You didn't like the scene with Optimus when he stepped on the deer and he was talking about the fragility of life, and
I got Iron Giant flashbacks.
Yeah. I mean, hey, not everything can be Iron Giant. That's
nothing needs to be the Iron Giant. Yeah. Did anybody read Everything Sucks? I've never heard of Everything Sucks. It does sound like it would fit our brand.
Even though 2 out of 3 books we talked about tonight, we said didn't suck, really.
I got you, Bobby. I got you, Bobby. This one, Bobby? This one? Or did you want this one? Kate actually said she liked having the trade dress on it.
Going back and looking at the X-Men Origins Blue from last week, that the Virgin variant of that cover is just out of control.
Yeah.
I like the trade dress better on it because the X-Men logo mimics the color scheme of the Mystique.
Yeah, for
shadows.
Sure. Yeah.
I thought that looked really nice. I think it looks better.
Yeah, and I think because of the like gradation of color on that cover, it makes a giant blank spot in that upper left corner that is kind of odd.
So, I mean,
I get it.
If you like the cover, I mean, I understand the desire of the collector to have the rare one, but like honestly, I think just if you're buying it for a cover buy, just buy the trade dress for cover price because it looks better.
It is fantastic for sure. I don't know that I have anything big to mention. Like I mentioned before, I finished the first arc of the new Blade series. I don't know if I'm going to go with the second arc and keep up with it. I may just go over and read that digitally. I'm actually leaning towards, I know it's bold, but when all these X titles end, I'm considering doing a big break and just waiting the few months before it's all on the Marvel app and just reading it that way from here for a while. We'll see how strongly I stick with that.
It's a big commitment to buy all the X books coming out every month.
I mean, I definitely pick and choose. I've got the 3 or 4 that I really like a month, and I try not to get all of them. But we'll see when they relaunch what is the ones that hook me. I have been enjoying, thanks to JP, the Birds of Prey, and I just grabbed issue 4 today, and that had a really good issue 3 last month that was very entertaining. So some of that stuff's been really great until you see storm covers. Yeah, that's right, Perry. And then they hook you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to buy the storm covers even if you're reading them digitally.
I mean, that's fair. That's where I'm saving that money to get that variant, right?
Yeah. It's like
theoretically.
It's like me with Poison Ivy. I'm glad that it's still coming out because it was supposed to be a much shorter series, but since I started from issue 1 buying all of the covers,
yeah,
now I'm locked into doing that. And we're gonna have a long box of Poison Ivy books before this friggin' thing's done.
I'm not far off, but I'm trying to be good. I only got 2 this week, so I didn't go crazy.
The only ones I have not been buying are if the 1 in 50s are just
like a virgin version of
or a foil version,
or
but if the ones that are unique artworks I've been buying, but otherwise I've been skipping them because I have to draw the line somewhere.
Well, it's a lot, and some of them are silly at that point. Yeah. So that's it for me. Like I mentioned, next month, we're doing our end of 2023 look back. So that'll happen at the beginning of January somewhere on White Whale Comics YouTube channel, which is linked down below. So be ready for that. And if you've got books from 2023 you want us to make sure we've read or hear about, definitely leave those comments, and I'd be happy to have more to add to my brain, because I'm feeling like as my poll list has shrunk significantly, making a list is going to be very challenging this year for me. We'll see how well I do. But until that time, thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you guys all again next month. Peace.